Fiction notice. Every character, company, hotel group, bank, investment vehicle, and incident in this narrative has been created for storytelling purposes. Any similarity to real life is accidental, and nothing here portrays a real dispute or organization. Story: Millionaire husband gave his mistress his pregnant wife's black card. She froze it before the gala. Keep listening, because what looks like a luxury shopping embarrassment before a Manhattan gala becomes a much larger test of trust, money, and character. If stories about betrayal, family, and second chances keep you watching, subscribe to the channel and stay through the final scene. Evelyn Sterling is 7 months pregnant when her husband gives another woman her black card. She does not make a scene. She simply makes sure the card stops working. The first thing Evelyn Sterling froze that night was a black card. Harrison Cole wouldn't understand until later that the card was the least valuable thing he was about to lose. Beep. Declined. Bianca Reed stared at the payment terminal inside Belrose Jewelers, the private luxury salon adjoining Manhattan's Grand Meridian Hotel. Beyond the glass doors, staff hurried toward the ballroom where the Sterling Children's Gala would begin in less than an hour. Crystal chandeliers burned above polished marble. Champagne waited on silver trays. Somewhere downstairs, a string quartet was rehearsing. Bianca looked at the diamond necklace resting against her collarbone. $61,400. Try it again. The sales associate hesitated. Ms. Reed, again. She pushed the black card across the counter. Beep. Declined. Bianca's expression hardened. At 33, she had perfected the confidence of a woman accustomed to entering rooms as though someone had already invited her. Tonight, Harrison had promised something even better. After the Vantage Crown announcement, he said everything would change. No more hiding. No more waiting. Then Harrison Cole appeared in the doorway. 40 years old. Tall. Dark-haired. Steel gray eyes. Black tuxedo. The polished face business magazines loved calling self-made. What happened? Bianca held up the card. It won't go through. Harrison frowned. That's impossible. He took it from her. His eyes dropped to the embossed name. Evelyn Sterling Cole. His pregnant wife. For half a second, Harrison said nothing. Then he handed it back to the associate. Run it again. Sir, it has already declined twice. Then make it 3. Beep. Declined. Harrison's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone. Who are you calling? Bianca asked. Evie. 12 blocks away, Evelyn Sterling sat in the back of a black town car moving slowly through Manhattan traffic. 7 months pregnant, 28 years old, with luminous fair skin, long blonde hair falling in soft waves over a champagne-colored gown. Evie looked almost too composed for what she already knew. Her phone vibrated. Harrison. She watched his name glow. 1 second. 2. 3. Then answered. Hello. Turn the card back on. No greeting. No explanation. Evie looked through the window as rain streaked the city lights into gold. One hand rested protectively over her belly. Which card? Silence. Don't do this tonight, Evie. Do what? Harrison lowered his voice. Bianca is handling purchases for the gala. The card was declined. Evie closed her eyes briefly. There it was. Not an apology. Not even embarrassment. Annoyance. Why is Bianca holding my card? Harrison said nothing. The baby moved beneath Evie's palm. Harrison. She needed it for an event purchase. A $61,000 necklace. Another silence. This one longer. Back at Belrose, Bianca watched Harrison's face change. Evie, we have donors arriving. I don't have time for this. Neither do I. Reactivate it. Evie looked down at the cream leather folder beside her. Inside were documents Harrison had never expected her to request. 6 months of charges. A furnished apartment. Recurring payments. And one preliminary financing package stamped with 2 words that mattered far more than any credit limit. Sterling authorization. Harrison believed his wife was angry about jewelry. He still thought this was a marriage argument. No, Evie said. Excuse me. The card stays frozen. She ended the call. Harrison stared at his phone. Bianca shifted beside him. What did she say? His expression became cold. She'll change her mind. But inside the town car, Evie opened the folder and touched the unsigned page waiting near the back. The gala lights appeared ahead through the rain. She had frozen the card 48 hours earlier. Tonight, Harrison was going to discover she had also stopped something much larger from moving forward. 48 hours earlier, Evelyn Sterling still hoped the receipt had an innocent explanation. She found it folded inside Harrison's tuxedo jacket while the housekeeper was preparing his clothes for the gala. Belrose Jewelers. Private fitting. Diamond necklace. $61,400. Client. Bianca Reed. Evie read the name twice. Harrison. He was standing near the bedroom windows answering emails, Manhattan glowing silver behind him. What? Evie held up the receipt. Why is Bianca's name on this? Harrison barely glanced at it. Client gifting. $61,000? She handles major partners. Belrose is one of them. His answer arrived too quickly. Evie looked down again. It says private fitting. Harrison finally put his phone away, because she needed to approve the piece before the gala. For whom? A pause. A donor arrangement. Evie studied his face. 7 years of marriage had taught her the difference between Harrison being annoyed and Harrison buying time. Tonight, he was buying seconds. Why didn't you mention it? Because not every invoice requires a marital conference. The words were quiet, sharp. Then his expression softened artificially. He crossed the room and touched her shoulder. Evie, you're exhausted. You're 7 months pregnant. Stop looking for problems. There it was. Pregnancy again. The convenient explanation for every question he did not want to answer. Evie lowered the receipt. Maybe you're right. Harrison kissed her forehead. I usually am. He left 10 minutes later. At 9:16 that evening, Evie's phone vibrated. The message came from Lauren Mitchell, an acquaintance who worked with several Manhattan luxury brands. I wasn't sure whether to send this, but I'd want someone to tell me. Beneath the message was a photograph. Evie opened it. Bianca stood inside Belrose wearing a black cocktail dress. The diamond necklace rested against her throat. Behind her stood Harrison. His hand was at her waist. Not passing behind her. Not accidental. Intimate. Evie's breath caught. Then she saw the counter. 2 champagne glasses. A velvet jewelry case. And a black card. She enlarged the image. Evelyn Sterling Cole. Her card. For months, Harrison had explained the late dinners. The overnight meetings. Bianca's messages after midnight. Evie had listened because marriage required trust. Or at least she had believed it did. She sat slowly on the edge of the bed, one hand covering her belly. Her daughter kicked. Evie did not call Harrison. She called Sterling Private Bank. I need my black card frozen immediately. The representative verified her identity. Was the card lost or stolen? Evie stared at Harrison's hand around Bianca's waist. It was taken without my permission. Would you like us to review recent activity? Yes. 6 months. Minutes later, secure statements appeared on her laptop. Evie began reading. Restaurants. Hotels. Private transportation. Flowers. Belrose. Then a recurring payment appeared every month. Westbridge Residences. Corporate housing. Evie frowned. She had never heard Harrison mention Westbridge. She searched the address printed beside the merchant record. Midtown Manhattan. Luxury furnished apartments. Her pulse slowed instead of quickening. That frightened her more. She downloaded every statement, printed every page, and marked the recurring payments in yellow. Then she called Rachel Monroe, the attorney who had represented the Sterling family for 14 years. Rachel, I need you to verify an address for me. Legally. What happened? Evie looked at the photograph again. I think my husband has another life. Silence. Then Rachel's voice became precise. Send me what you have. Don't go there. Don't confront anyone. Evie forwarded the records. At 11:48 p.m., Rachel called back. Evie. Something in her tone made Evie sit straighter. I found the residence. Evie gripped the phone. And Rachel paused. The apartment isn't the part you need to be worried about most. The apartment is real, Rachel said. But it's only the first layer. Evie sat motionless on the edge of her bed, the city glowing beyond the windows while Harrison's side remained perfectly made. What did you find? Westbridge's corporate housing. The lease is held through a vendor used by Cole Meridian Hotels. Evie closed her eyes. So Harrison can call it business. He can call it whatever he wants. The documents matter more. Rachel had not entered the apartment and had not tried to obtain private tenant records. She reviewed only material Evie was entitled to access as the cardholder, together with public corporate information. Through the billing dispute channel, Evie obtained merchant-level receipts for charges on her account. Westbridge invoices showed repeated stays, cleaning, flowers, and furniture service. One receipt listed the guest contact as Bianca Reed. That does not prove who signed the lease, Rachel cautioned. But it does establish that your account has been paying recurring expenses tied to her use of the residence. Evie's fingers tightened around the phone. For several seconds, she heard only her own breathing. Then her daughter moved beneath her ribs. Send it. The billing packet arrived seconds later. Evie opened it. Westbridge Residences. Unit 31B. Guest contact, Bianca Reed. She stared at the screen. Suddenly, the late meetings had walls. The business dinners had furniture. The affair had an address. Evie walked slowly toward the nursery across the hall. Half-finished white shelves lined one wall. A small wooden crib waited beneath the window. Harrison had assembled it himself 3 Sundays earlier, laughing when he installed one rail backward. Evie had taken photographs. She had believed that afternoon meant something. Now, 30 blocks away, another home contained furniture purchased through accounts connected to the life Harrison claimed belonged to them. How long? Evie asked. Rachel paused. The earliest recurring payment I can confirm is 5 months ago. 5 months. Evie was 7 months pregnant. She rested her hand on the crib. Harrison had been preparing one home while she prepared another. There's more, Rachel said. Evie almost laughed, but no sound came. Of course there is. Some of these charges appear to have been categorized as business-related expenses. That doesn't automatically mean anything improper happened. We need records before drawing conclusions. That was why Evie trusted Rachel. No accusations. No fantasy. Facts first. What records? Corporate expense classifications. Vendor authorizations. And I want to review anything connected to the Vantage Crown transaction. Evie frowned. Why Vantage? Silence. Rachel. Because Bianca's name appears somewhere else. Evie left the nursery and returned to her laptop. Where? A preliminary management proposal. Rachel sent another document. Evie opened it. At the top, Vantage Crown Resorts, post-acquisition leadership structure. She scrolled. Harrison Cole, Chief Executive Officer. Thomas Reed, Chief Financial Officer. Then, Bianca Reed, Executive Vice President, Brand Strategy. Evie stopped breathing for a moment. He's giving her a position? It appears proposed. Not finalized. Anything else? Potential performance equity after closing. The betrayal changed shape again. This was no longer only about a mistress hidden in a furnished apartment. Harrison was building Bianca into his future. A home. A title. Equity. Evie looked at the photograph from Belrose still open beside the document. Harrison's hand around Bianca's waist. The necklace. Her black card. Everything connected now. Rachel, how is Vantage being financed? Another pause. Longer this time. That, Rachel said, is the question I hoped you would ask. Evie stared through the dark windows toward Manhattan. Somewhere in the city, Harrison believed his wife was sleeping. Instead, she was finally tracing the architecture of his second life. And before sunrise, she would discover that the most important signature in Harrison's future was not his. Harrison doesn't need your permission to run his company, Rachel said the next morning. But he does need your authorization to use Sterling Capital for what comes next. At 8:06 a.m., cold sunlight spilled across the marble dining table in Evie's penthouse. Rachel Monroe sat opposite her with 3 folders arranged between them. Westbridge. Corporate expenses. Vantage Crown Resorts. Evie had slept less than 2 hours. She still looked composed. Her blonde hair was pulled loosely behind her shoulders. Her face pale, one hand resting beneath the curve of her 7-month belly. Show me. Rachel opened the Vantage folder. Cole Meridian has been negotiating the acquisition for months. Harrison's company is contributing capital, and lenders are providing acquisition debt. But there's another piece. She turned the page. Evelyn Sterling Investments. Proposed CO investment commitment. The vehicle was administered by the Sterling family office, but represented Evie's own capital. Harrison had mentioned it weeks earlier over dinner and called it routine. I agreed to let the team conduct due diligence, Evie said. Yes. Nothing more. Rachel tapped the signature block. It was empty. The final investment commitment requires your approval. It has not been executed. Evie looked up. Can Vantage close without it? Not under the financing package currently scheduled for the Gala announcement. They would need replacement capital or a restructured deal. So I can stop the acquisition? Rachel shook her head. No. You can refuse to invest your own capital. Harrison can seek another investor or restructure the deal. What he does afterward is his responsibility. The distinction mattered. Evie did not want revenge disguised as justice. She did not want hotel employees waking up unemployed because their CEO had betrayed his wife. What happens to Cole Meridian if I refuse? Its existing hotels keep operating. Existing payroll is separate. This affects the Vantage transaction. Evie exhaled slowly. Good. Rachel studied her. You were worried about the employees. They didn't cheat on me. For the first time that morning, Rachel's expression softened. There is also a governance issue, she said. Because Harrison is your husband, I recommend that you disclose the conflict to the Sterling family office and recuse yourself from any committee discussion about Cole Meridian. Your personal investment decision is yours. The family office's decision must be independent. Evie nodded. Do it that way. Then she opened another document. There's one more thing. The proposed post-acquisition leadership chart appeared again. Bianca Reed, Executive Vice President, Brand Strategy. Beneath it sat a compensation schedule. Salary. Performance bonus. Potential equity after closing. Evie stared at the numbers. Harrison had not merely promised Bianca affection. He had designed permanence. An apartment to live in. A title to carry. Equity to keep. And Sterling money helping finance the platform beneath all three. Does Bianca know where the investment comes from? I can't establish that. Does Harrison? Rachel looked directly at her. Absolutely. Silence filled the room. Evie remembered every dinner where Harrison described himself as self-made. Every interview where he spoke about risk as though he alone carried it. Every time Evie stayed out of the photographs because she thought marriage did not require public credit. She had mistaken silence for generosity. Harrison had mistaken it for absence. At 8:31, his name appeared on her phone. Evie let it ring. Then a message followed. Big day tomorrow. Wear the champagne gown. Vantage changes everything for us. Evie read the final word twice. Us. Rachel slid the unsigned authorization toward her. If you want this commitment to proceed, we can continue the process. Evie looked at the signature line. Her daughter moved beneath her palm. Then she thought about Bianca's necklace. Unit 31B. The executive title. The life Harrison was quietly constructing while asking his pregnant wife to finance the foundation beneath it. Evie closed the folder. Don't approve it. Rachel waited. You're certain? Evie picked up Harrison's message one last time, then turned the phone face down. My money does not close his deal. Outside, Manhattan was waking beneath a clear winter sky. Harrison Cole was preparing to announce the largest acquisition of his career, and he still believed the only signature that mattered was his. Without me, you wouldn't have any of this. Harrison said it quietly at first. Then he noticed who was listening and made the mistake of saying it again. Any of it. Evie stood in a sponsor lounge just off the ballroom, one hand resting over her belly while the gala continued beyond closed doors. Muffled violin strings, crystal glasses, distant applause. Only a handful of board members, family representatives, and transaction advisors were present. Bianca remained several feet away, suddenly less interested in the necklace around her throat than in the words passing between husband and wife. Harrison, Evie said softly. Stop. He heard surrender where there was only warning. No. You wanted to embarrass me tonight? Fine. His steel gray eyes hardened. But don't pretend you built this life. Two board members stopped speaking. Charles Sterling looked up from the transaction packet. Evie felt her daughter move beneath the champagne fabric. I never said I did. You didn't have to. Harrison gestured toward the ballroom. The penthouse. The invitations. The people who know your name because you married me. Evie stared at him. 7 years of marriage reduced to a balance sheet written by the wrong accountant. Without me, Harrison continued, you wouldn't have any of this. Charles Sterling closed the folder in front of him and stood. 62, silver-haired, composed. Charles had chaired the Sterling family office long enough to know that the most expensive mistakes were usually made by men speaking too confidently. He approached without hurry. Harrison. Harrison's expression changed immediately. Charles. I couldn't help overhearing. This is between my wife and me. Charles glanced at Evie. Then perhaps you shouldn't be turning her personal investment decision into a claim about her dependence. Harrison's jaw tightened. That isn't what I said. Good. Charles adjusted one cuff. Because it would make tonight's Vantage announcement rather awkward. Bianca frowned. What does Vantage have to do with Evelyn? Harrison turned toward her. Nothing. Charles looked at him. Nothing. One word. No accusation. No raised voice. Just enough. Evie watched the confidence drain from Harrison's face by degrees. The acquisition is financed, Harrison said. The financing package is structured, Charles corrected. Those are not the same thing. Harrison glanced toward the stage. Cole Meridian Hotels plus Vantage Crown Resorts. 9 p.m. 8:51. 9 minutes. Sterling participated in preliminary discussions, Harrison said carefully. Correct. Your investment team approved due diligence. Correct. Harrison exhaled. Then there's no issue. Charles's eyes moved briefly to Evie before returning to him. I assume, then, Vantage won't need Evelyn's final authorization tonight. Silence. Bianca looked at Evie. Then Harrison. Final authorization? Harrison ignored her. Charles, can we speak privately? Certainly. After you apologize to my niece. Harrison's face hardened. For what? Evie almost felt sorry for him then. Almost. Because even now, with the truth standing directly in front of him, Harrison still believed the problem was etiquette. His phone vibrated. He looked down. Thomas Reed, CFO. He declined the call. It rang again immediately. Then another notification appeared. General Counsel. Another. Vantage Transaction Team. Harrison's breathing changed. 8:52. 8 minutes. Evie. He finally looked directly at his wife. Did you sign the commitment? She held his gaze. No. The word was barely louder than the quartet. Harrison went still. Why not? Because it's my decision. You already agreed. I agreed to due diligence. You can't change the terms now. Charles answered before Evie could. She isn't changing anything. The final commitment was never executed. Bianca took a small step backward. Harrison looked around as if someone might offer him another version of reality. Nobody did. Then the ballroom doors opened. Thomas Reed hurried inside, phone in hand, his face pale. Harrison saw him coming. So did Evie. Behind them, the Vantage presentation continued glowing above the stage, promising an acquisition that still existed only on paper. Harrison had spent the evening telling everyone what belonged to him. In 8 minutes, he was going to discover what never had. The bank paused the Vantage closing. Thomas Reed said it before he reached Harrison. The CFO stopped just inside the sponsor lounge doors, breathing hard, his phone still glowing in his hand. Harrison stared at him. Paused. The final financing package is incomplete. Then completed. Thomas glanced toward Evie and Charles. That glance was enough. Harrison's voice sharpened. Thomas, the Sterling commitment hasn't been executed. Inside the sponsor lounge, conversation stopped. Beyond the doors, the gala continued without them. Harrison checked his watch. 8:53, 7 minutes before the announcement. We have lender commitments. Subject to the final capital structure. Call them. I already did. Call them again. Thomas lowered his voice. They won't release the acquisition funds tonight. Harrison turned toward Evie. For the first time, there was no anger in his face. Only disbelief. Sign it. Evie remained still. No, you don't understand what you're doing. Then explain it. Harrison gestured toward the ballroom. Thousands of people depend on this company. Evie looked at Thomas. Will existing Cole Meridian hotels close tomorrow if I don't sign? Thomas hesitated. Harrison stepped forward. That isn't the point. Evie kept her eyes on the CFO. Will they? No. Will payroll stop? No. Are current operating facilities affected tonight? Thomas shook his head. No. This affects the Vantage acquisition financing. Evie turned back to Harrison. Then stop using your employees to frighten me. His face tightened. You're jeopardizing growth. Your growth. Our future. Evie glanced toward Bianca. Which future? Bianca looked away. Harrison lowered his voice. Whatever happened between Bianca and me has nothing to do with Vantage. You proposed giving her an executive position after closing. Harrison froze. Thomas looked at him. Charles said nothing. He didn't need to. You went through confidential documents? Harrison asked. My attorney reviewed financial commitments involving my trust interests. Evie's voice remained calm. Legally. 8:55, 5 minutes. Harrison stepped closer. Evie, listen to me. Sign tonight. Tomorrow we can discuss the apartment, Bianca, the card, everything. There it was. Not denial. Negotiation. Bianca's expression changed. The apartment? Harrison closed his eyes briefly. Not now. You told her? Bianca asked. I said not now. Evie watched the two of them. Harrison had spent months keeping everyone in separate rooms. Tonight, the doors were opening. "Please," Harrison whispered. Evie looked at him. The word almost hurt more than the lies. 7 years of marriage, and he had finally learned how to ask instead of command when millions of dollars were waiting on the answer. "If I sign," she said, "does anything about what you did become less true?" Harrison said nothing. "Does the apartment disappear?" Silence. "Does Bianca's position disappear?" His jaw tightened. "We can restructure that." Bianca stared at him. "Restructure?" Harrison ignored her. "Evie, this deal is bigger than us. Then it should survive without my money." 8:57. A technician near the stage received a message and touched his headset. The giant Vantage screen flickered. Once, twice, then went black. A murmur rolled through the ballroom. Harrison turned toward it. "What happened?" Thomas answered quietly. "The announcement has been postponed." Harrison looked as though someone had removed the floor beneath him. His phone vibrated again. He read the notification. "Emergency board review. 8 a.m. tomorrow." "You did this," he said. Evie shook her head. "No, I declined to do something. You're destroying the biggest deal of my career." "Your employees are safe," she said. "Your hotels are still open. Your company still exists." She paused. "Your promise isn't." Harrison stared at her. Across the room, guests were already whispering about the darkened screen. Bianca slowly moved away from him. One step, then another. At exactly 9 p.m, no announcement came. No champagne toast followed. No cameras captured Harrison Cole celebrating Vantage Crown Resorts. Instead, the millionaire stood beneath an empty screen while his pregnant wife remained beside the family whose money he had mistaken for his own. Evie had not taken his company. She had not taken his fortune. She had simply stopped holding open a door he had already decided to walk through with someone else. "You told me Vantage was already funded." Bianca's voice was quiet, but Harrison heard every word. Beyond the sponsor lounge doors, the gala had begun moving again, cautiously, while the small group of advisors inside the room remained still. Harrison turned toward her. "Not here. You keep saying that." Bianca touched the diamond necklace at her throat. $61,400 of borrowed elegance suddenly felt heavier. "You told me the Sterling money was committed. The financing will be restructured." "That isn't what I asked." Harrison glanced toward Evie, who stood beside Charles and Rachel near the lounge windows. "Bianca, go home." She stared at him. "To Westbridge." Harrison froze. Evie did not. Rachel had warned her that truth often became easiest to hear when liars realized their stories no longer matched. Bianca stepped closer. "You told me the apartment was covered through your company." "It is." "And the necklace?" "I said I would handle it." "With her card?" Harrison's jaw tightened. "You were perfectly comfortable using it." Bianca recoiled. "Because you told me it was a family account. You knew I was married." "I knew you were married." Her voice sharpened. "I didn't know your pregnant wife was financing the future you promised me." The few advisors still in the lounge stopped pretending not to listen. Evie remained silent. She had imagined this moment differently during the sleepless hours after discovering the photograph. She thought anger would feel hot. Instead, it felt cold. Almost clinical. Rachel opened the cream folder in her hands. "Evie, I have the records we discussed." Harrison looked over. "What records?" Rachel answered evenly. "Transaction-specific statements from Evelyn's accounts, supporting merchant invoices, and documents concerning expenses that may require review." "Review by whom?" "Company counsel and the audit committee can determine whether anything was improperly classified or whether relevant conflicts should have been disclosed." Harrison stepped forward. "You're sending private marital records to my board?" Evie finally spoke. "Only records from accounts connected to me, and only the portions relevant to those transactions. You have no idea what those expenses represent. That's why professionals should review them." Harrison looked at Rachel. "Don't send anything." Rachel looked at Evie instead. "Your decision." For 7 years, Harrison had made decisions and informed Evie afterward. The apartment, the card, Bianca, even Vantage had been presented as something already inevitable. Evie rested one hand on her belly. "Send the relevant excerpts. Redact everything unrelated." Rachel tapped her phone. Harrison's expression changed. "Evie." A soft electronic chime sounded. "Sent." Bianca slowly reached behind her neck. Harrison noticed. "What are you doing?" She unclasped the necklace. The diamonds slipped into her palm. Belrose still owns this. Put it back on. Bianca almost laughed. Why? Because the board is watching. That sentence finished what the financing collapse had started. Bianca looked at him for several seconds, then placed the necklace carefully inside its velvet case on a nearby table. No dramatic gesture. No broken glass. Just diamonds returning to the box they had never truly left. You told me after tonight I'd never have to hide again, she said. Harrison lowered his voice. We can talk tomorrow. Tomorrow you have a board review. He said nothing. Bianca picked up her clutch. Where are you going? Somewhere I don't have to ask which parts of my life belong to your wife. Then she walked through the sponsor lounge doors. Harrison watched them close behind her before turning back to Evie. Are you happy now? Evie looked at him. No, and that was the truth. Revenge would have required pleasure. What she felt was something quieter. Finality. On the lounge monitor behind Harrison, the Vantage title card had been replaced by the Gala program. The black card had exposed the entitlement. Westbridge had exposed the affair. The financial records would be reviewed by people whose job was to determine the rest. Evie did not need to destroy Harrison Cole. She only needed to stop protecting him from the cost of being himself. 6 months later, the first snow of the season fell over Manhattan, while Evelyn Sterling stood inside a children's reading room on the ground floor of a renovated family hotel. Grace slept against her chest in a soft carrier. Around them, volunteers arranged picture books on low shelves and tested lamps shaped like little moons. The room had nothing to do with Vantage Crown. That was the point. After the gala, Cole Meridian's board commissioned an independent review of expense classifications, disclosure practices, and Harrison's relationship with Bianca. Evie supplied only records she was legally entitled to provide. She did not demand an outcome. The Sterling family office separately documented her conflict, and she recused herself from any committee discussion involving Cole Meridian. Harrison found replacement advisors and tried to rebuild the Vantage financing, but the seller chose another buyer before he could close. Cole Meridian survived. Harrison did not lose every hotel, every dollar, or every person who had ever worked for him. Life was less theatrical than that. The board did, however, conclude that his failure to disclose the relationship and his handling of company-connected expenses had damaged confidence in his leadership. He stepped down as chief executive and remained a non-executive shareholder while a new management team took over. Bianca left the company. Belrose recovered the necklace. Westbridge closed the corporate housing arrangement after the disputed expenses were reviewed. Evie never met Bianca privately and never asked her for an apology. The person Evie needed boundaries with was Harrison. Their divorce agreement took months. There were difficult meetings, careful financial disclosures, and long conversations about Grace. Harrison's first instinct had been to negotiate everything as if marriage were another acquisition. By the third mediation session, even he seemed to understand that there was no deal that could purchase the old life back. One afternoon he said, I keep thinking if I explain enough, you'll understand why I made the choices I made. Evie looked across the conference table. I understand that you made them, she said. That's enough. He lowered his eyes. Later, when Grace was born, Harrison came to the hospital during the time Evie had agreed to. He washed his hands, sat in the chair beside the window, and held his daughter for 12 silent minutes. No promises, no speech, just a father learning that access to a child was not the same as ownership of a family. The reading room was Evie's idea after Grace's birth. She funded it personally through a small literacy initiative connected to several independent hotels and community organizations. No Sterling name appeared above the door. Evie wanted children to enter a beautiful room without having to know which wealthy family had paid for the shelves. Charles Sterling arrived carrying 2 cartons of donated books. You know, he said, setting them down, your grandfather would have put his name on the building. Evie smiled. That's why I didn't. Charles laughed. Her phone vibrated. A banking notification appeared. New card ready for activation. The replacement black card had arrived weeks earlier. Evelyn Sterling. No Cole. She had not activated it. Not because she was afraid to use money. Not because she wanted the card to become a symbol. She simply no longer needed a piece of metal to close the story for her. Evie dismissed the notification. Across the room, a little girl opened a book and began reading aloud to her younger brother. Grace stirred against Evie's chest. Harrison had once believed the most important signature in their life was the one that moved capital. Bianca had believed the black card meant she had been invited into a future. Evie had believed patience could keep a marriage safe if she gave enough of it. All three ideas had failed. What remained was simpler. Money needed rules. Businesses needed governance. Children needed adults who did not make them carry adult conflicts. And love needed consent every single day, not just on the day vows were spoken. Evie walked to the window. Snow gathered softly along the sill. Grace opened her eyes. "Look," Evie whispered. Outside, the city had not changed because one marriage ended. Cars moved. People hurried. Lights came on in office towers. That comforted her. The future did not need to announce itself from a gala stage. Sometimes it began in a quiet room, with a sleeping baby, a shelf of books, and one woman finally understanding that saying no had not made her cold. It had made room for everything she still wanted to say yes to.